She was laughing at him when the chandelier fell. The sound came first, a sharp crack like a gunshot slicing through the soft violin music of the restaurant. Then came the scream. Crystal and iron tore loose from the ceiling of the luxury rooftop dining hall, plummeting straight toward the table, where one of the most powerful CEOs in the city sat across from a man she had spent the last 20 minutes quietly humiliating. But before anyone else even processed what was happening, he moved. He didn't hesitate. He didn't freeze. He didn't look around to see if someone more important would act first. He simply acted. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that a person's worth can't be measured by their job title or their bank account, take a second right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs a reminder about humility, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that move the heart. Daniel Harper never imagined he would end up on a blind date with someone like Victoria Langford. She was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech corporations in the state, a woman whose face appeared on magazine covers and business panels. Her company had just closed a multi-million-dollar acquisition. She owned 2 penthouses and a beach house. She traveled in private jets and dined with investors who measured their wealth in billions. Daniel, on the other hand, drove a second-hand sedan with a dent in the left door and worked as a maintenance supervisor at a community recreation center. He was also a single father, for 7 years. Since the night his wife never came home from the hospital, he had raised his daughter Lily alone, learning how to braid hair from YouTube tutorials, how to pack balanced lunches on a tight budget, how to stay strong when grief came in waves at 2 a.m. He learned how to smile even when exhaustion lived in his bones. He learned that real strength was quiet. The blind date wasn't his idea. It was arranged by his cousin, who insisted he deserved to get back out there. Daniel resisted for weeks, but eventually agreed. He didn't expect fireworks. He just hoped for a decent conversation and maybe a small reminder that life still had room for something new. Victoria arrived 20 minutes late. She stepped into the rooftop restaurant like she owned the air itself. Her dress was elegant and sharp, her heels clicking with authority. Conversations paused when she walked past. Even the staff seemed to stand straighter. Daniel stood politely when she reached the table. Her eyes scanned him quickly. His simple navy blazer, his inexpensive watch, the slight scuff on his shoe he hadn't noticed. The warmth in her smile never reached her eyes. Within minutes, she began the subtle interrogation. She asked what he did. When he answered honestly, she nodded in a way that felt like dismissal. She asked about his ambitions. He spoke about stability, about being present for his daughter, about making sure the community center was safe for kids. Her lips curved faintly, as if he'd just told her he collected bottle caps for fun. Then she asked about his family. When he mentioned his daughter, her eyebrow lifted almost imperceptibly. A single dad. You could almost see the mental checklist forming behind her eyes. The conversation drifted into uncomfortable territory. She spoke about high-stakes negotiations and international expansions. He spoke about fixing broken heating systems and organizing youth sports leagues. She laughed lightly at one point, not cruelly loud but sharp enough to cut. She made a comment about how brave it was for him to put himself out there, as if dating him required charity. Daniel felt the familiar sting of being underestimated. He had felt it before, when other parents looked at him with pity at school events, when people assumed he couldn't handle both work and fatherhood, when someone once asked if his daughter's grandparents were the real guardians. He had learned to let those comments slide off him like rain. But that night, sitting across from someone who measured value in revenue charts, the weight felt heavier. Still, he remained calm, because Daniel had learned something else over the years. You don't waste energy proving yourself to someone determined not to see you. The restaurant's rooftop was strung with delicate crystal chandeliers that shimmered under the city skyline. Soft music floated through the air. A gentle breeze carried the scent of expensive perfume and grilled seafood, and then came that crack. It was so subtle at first that most people ignored it, but Daniel didn't. He had spent years in maintenance. He knew the language of strain and stress. He knew the difference between a harmless sound and a warning. His eyes flicked upward just in time to see the central mounting bolt of the chandelier snap. Time slowed. Victoria was mid-sentence, describing a high-profile conference in Zurich. Daniel saw the trajectory. He saw the angle. He calculated distance instinctively. In one swift motion, he lunged across the table, grabbing Victoria by the waist and yanking her sideways. The heavy wooden chair tipped. Glasses shattered as they crashed to the ground. A split second later, the chandelier slammed into the table where she had been sitting, exploding into a storm of crystal shards. The sound was deafening. Screams filled the rooftop. But Victoria was alive. Pinned beneath Daniel's protective hold, her breath came in short, stunned gasps. Tiny fragments of glass glittered around them like fallen stars. Daniel's arms were bleeding from several cuts. One larger shard had sliced into his shoulder. But he barely seemed to notice. His first words weren't about himself. He asked if she was hurt. The arrogance that had wrapped around Victoria like armor was gone. In its place was something raw, shock. For the first time that evening, she looked at him not as a checklist of shortcomings, but as the reason her heart was still beating. Emergency services arrived quickly. The rooftop was evacuated. Paramedics treated Daniel's wounds while staff inspected the collapsed fixture. It turned out a maintenance inspection had been delayed. Corrosion had weakened the support structure. Victoria watched as Daniel calmly explained what likely happened, pointing out structural details with precise accuracy. He spoke in technical terms that surprised even the building manager. His knowledge wasn't surface level. It was deep, experienced, confident. This wasn't just a maintenance supervisor. This was someone who understood safety, engineering, structural integrity. Someone who had probably prevented dozens of smaller disasters no one ever knew about. Later, at the hospital, as Daniel sat with stitches in his shoulder, Victoria remained unusually quiet. She replayed the moment over and over. The speed of his reaction. The strength in his arms. The way he didn't hesitate. The way he shielded her body with his own. No cameras, no investors, no audience to impress. Just instinct. She realized something uncomfortable. In 20 minutes, she had reduced him to a job title. In 2 seconds, he had saved her life. Over the next few days, something unexpected happened. Victoria couldn't stop thinking about him, not in the romantic, cinematic way she was used to experiencing admiration, but in a way that unsettled her worldview. She had built her empire on control, on perception, on measurable metrics. But there was nothing measurable about what Daniel did. It was character. She did something she rarely did. She researched him, not to judge, but to understand. She discovered he had taken night courses in structural safety after his wife passed away, determined to secure a better position for stability. She learned he had volunteered during local flood relief efforts. She found an article about how he once organized a fundraiser to repair the recreation center's playground equipment after a storm destroyed it. No press releases, no social media announcements, just quiet action. Victoria began to see the emptiness in her own recent relationships. Men who flaunted status but lacked substance. Men who spoke confidently but never about anyone beyond themselves. A week later, she asked to see him again. Daniel hesitated. He didn't want to be anyone's redemption project. He didn't want pity disguised as curiosity. But he agreed to coffee in a simple cafe far away from rooftop chandeliers and luxury menus. This time, she arrived early. This time, she listened. She apologized. Not with grand gestures, but with honesty. She admitted she had judged him. She admitted she had confused success with superiority. Daniel didn't smile immediately. Forgiveness for him wasn't automatic, but he appreciated accountability. He told her about Lily, about bedtime stories and school recitals, about the fear he carried every day of not being enough, about the strength single parenthood forced him to develop. Victoria spoke about pressure, about loneliness at the top, about the way power isolates you. For the first time, they met as equals, not CEO and maintenance supervisor, just two human beings shaped by different battles. Months passed. Their relationship didn't rush. Victoria began visiting the recreation center. She saw how children ran to Daniel, how parents trusted him. She saw Lily's eyes light up when her father walked into a room, and she understood something she had never valued before. Influence isn't just boardrooms and headlines. Sometimes it's a father teaching his daughter resilience. Eventually, Victoria funded a city-wide safety initiative, not as a publicity stunt, but as a genuine effort to improve building inspections across public spaces. She appointed Daniel as a consultant for the program, Not because she owed him, but because he was qualified. The night that Chandelier fell could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it shattered more than glass. It shattered ego. It shattered assumptions. It shattered the illusion that wealth defines worth. And if this story has touched your heart so far, if you believe that humility and courage matter more than status, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Also, before we reach the end, comment the word character below if you believe true strength is revealed in moments when no one is watching. A year later, on another rooftop, this one carefully inspected, Daniel stood beside Victoria, not as someone beneath her, but as her partner. Lily stood between them, holding both their hands. The city lights shimmered again, but this time there was no arrogance in the air, only gratitude. Victoria often said later that the most valuable lesson of her life didn't come from a boardroom strategy or a billion-dollar deal. It came from a man she almost dismissed, a man who proved that greatness isn't loud, it's ready to act, ready to protect, ready to love without hesitation. Daniel never cared about impressing the world. He cared about being strong when it mattered. And on the night crystal rained from the ceiling, the single dad who was once mocked became the hero who changed everything, in seconds. Because sometimes, the person society underestimates is the one who holds the greatest strength of all, and sometimes it only takes a falling chandelier to reveal it.